Hi, Kristi.
Hi, how are you?
Very natural. So, thank you so much for granting me a bit of your time. I know your time is very precious. You do tons of things for the community. You do tons of things for the family, for your family. You do tons of things for your work. So I really appreciate the time you have for me today. We know each other for a few years, and I have to say that for every single call we had, you provided me. I cannot say added value. I have to say gold, because every time we had a discussion, you really helped me jump to the next level. So thank you so much.
Well, listen, you give it right back to the community. There are very few people who are as fun and spirited and informative than you are. I mean, you are definitely hands down my favorite people to chat with. And that's probably why I give you all the gold, is because you asked for it and you're good at asking great questions.
A lot of people within the CS community became customer success manager because they wanted to be in touch with the customers. They came from different backgrounds, support, sales, account management. They at some point they became customer success manager, and they became so good that they want to go to the next level, which for some of them is management. And I think it's important for some people to have some answers to the question.
All right. Well, been in customer success now for a decade, right? The first couple of years, though, were in individual contributor capacity. And getting started, I think the best leaders, and I've said this in other recordings, I think the best customer success leaders are ones that have been customer success managers to begin with, right? You have a different and deeper level of empathy when you've done the work. You know how hard it is to follow all the process and to navigate these customers. And so, I did have the privilege of serving as an individual contributor for a while, and then slowly moved into different leadership roles, right? So directors, senior directors, VPs, global directors, and then eventually, obviously, to where I am right now as a chief customer officer. And I think of all those roles, right, they all ran different scopes. In some cases, I was managing global teams. In some cases, it was just a smaller US team. So every single opportunity I had gave me a chance to do different things, right? Whether I oversaw just customer success or success and support or success support services or onboarding. And so I think the really cool thing about the different roles that I've had in leadership is the scope has always looked very different. And so I think that's been a really fun part of that journey, is just taking on those different elements of leadership.
So I have a first question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between head of CS, CCO, VP of CS? It feels like a lot of steps, but they all seem the same to me. So please help me.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, my director and senior director roles definitely felt similar, where I was over a specific remit. In those roles, I was just managing a team within a specific region and in a certain segment. And so it was very much about making sure that I was managing the people and the customers that fell into our business, right? And so what was under my remit. As I started to get into the VP roles, that's where my scope changed, and it became a little bit more business focused. The people management is obviously still there. The customer oversight is still there, but I'm less in the weeds, right? I was less day-to-day tactical and more about driving strategy and thinking a little bit bigger. And then, obviously the chief customer officer role, it became more, it definitely elevates the conversations that you're having. This strategy is definitely at the cornerstone of the work that I'm doing, and it becomes more cross-functional. So I'm less focused on just my area of operations, and it's more about the customer holistically and their experience throughout, partnering with our entire organization. So the scope evolves. I will say, nuances to that. Company size will change the scope of any role. The maturity of the customer success business within the organization changes the scope of those roles. The size of the team, the complexity of the product, right? So I always say it depends, because it surely does. And so my role has evolved, but like I said, every organization, the expectations were different, right? If I was a VP reporting to the CEO, that looked different than if I was a VP reporting to a chief customer officer, right? So the remit and scope changes, and I think evolves. I think it really just comes down to what is the business need for that person in that role.
You make it more difficult for me, because the more you speak, the more I have questions before my initial question. We're gonna get there. You said managing people, managing your customers customers of the CSM. What does it mean managing?
Oh gosh. Well, you know what? I'll take managing out of it because I don't like to think of myself as a manager as much as I like to think of myself as a leader. And for me, I'm a servant leader, right? So I believe that my role only exists to help create the paths for my team to be wildly successful, right? So whether it's designing process or getting them access to information or helping them work cross-functionally, opening doors with those teams, my role is to help them do their jobs really well. And so, you know, whatever that looks like in the day-to-day is how I think about that. And obviously, my goal is to make them successful in the role that they're in today in hopes that that translates into something bigger or different that they want to take on in the future.
Because your job is to help them grow, what are your personal success metrics?
Oh gosh. Well, I always say like my benchmark of success ultimately one day, I want to work for somebody who worked for me, right? Think of like that is the ultimate barometer of success as a leader. If I can one day say, wow, my boss is somebody who used to work for me, because it means that I did something in their journey. Obviously, they owe me nothing and like I'm not the reason why they're there, but at some point in their professional journey, I made an impact or they learned something from me that contributed to their growth. So when I think about like my personal goal as a leader, that would be it, right? That's the holy grail. One day for me to work for somebody who's ever worked for me. But in the day-to-day, listen, I mean, I think when I think about my goals, my goal is obviously I want to create personal and professional success for myself so I can help those around me be personally and professionally successful. And that looks different for everybody. I will say there's no two people in my organization, even today or ever that I can remember, who've ever needed the same things from me, right? Some people need my help with managing prioritization and, you know, tactical day-to-day, like how do I just drive efficiency? Other people only need me to help navigate, you know, significant customer challenges. Others, you know, are there really looking at me to be an inspiration to like, how do we carve out a career path for them, right? Something for them to emulate. So I always spend time trying to figure out what does each person need and want from me. And I try my best to deliver that. And so, you know, I think my professional and personal goals are always tied to that, right? If I can help them be successful in their own right, then I feel like I'm doing my job well. And I will tell you as a leader, you're never perfect. You're never going to get it right all the time. Even as much as you focus and aspire to do the best by your people, something will always impact that, right? I always say, listen, I know that people on my team always want to make more money, right? That's my hands are tied there, right? I could pay what I could pay. Other people want opportunities to lead. And you know what? Sometimes our organization isn't at a place where we need more leaders, right? So how do you buy time? How do you help them know that you're investing in them and you're committed to their success? But sometimes it's a timing and a balance thing, right? So even though I would always want to do everything that my team needs me to do, sometimes it's a little bit of a like what they need and what the business needs balance that we've got to figure out.
So I think you've answered to that already, but now that we've established what a CCO does and what's the difference between the different roles, what does your team expect from you?
I think the expectations are probably a little bit set because I've set them for them. But I think what my team expects and needs from me is to be very clear in what I expect from them, to set really clear goals that are attainable, maybe some stretch, that I'm creating process for them, that I'm helping facilitate cross-functional conversations and partnerships. But I think more importantly is that I'm empowering them, right? I think that's the big thing that my team really needs and wants from me is that they feel trusted and that they feel empowered to do the work that I hired them to do. And so for me, in my role, that is really what I want to make sure that I'm delivering early and often is that being very clear, obviously, in what I need and expect from all of them, but then also making sure that they feel empowered to go do those things with minimal oversight.
And how do you empower your CSMs?
You know, it's interesting that you say that, right? I try to give them the tools that they need to go and do their jobs well, while building in flexibility. And so what I mean by that is, you know, all of our processes are designed as a buffet, right? Like there are some processes that are like hard and fast. You got to do these things. But I think for the most part, what I do is I create options for my team. And I say, if this, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. These things are here for you to make choices, because we know not every customer situation will look the same or need the same response. So I think the big thing for me in empowerment is empowering them to make the choices that will drive the best outcome in that situation. And that's what I think about empowerment, right? Is I never want them to feel like our structure is too rigid, where they have to follow these things, they have to check that box, they have to do those items, because that's not the way the world works, right? That's not the way that people work. And we're in the people business. So we've got to design things so that my team knows, hey, you know what? I know the situation that we're in because of all of these factors. I actually can't follow this process. I got to defer to something else, or I'm going to go off script because I know that I need to handle this different given the situation. And I think the empowerment comes from them knowing and believing that I trust them to go do what's best for the customer and for the business. And so I do think the empowerment comes from a bit of trust and that built-in flexibility.
Gotcha. It's funny. I'm passionate about CS ops these days, and it really resonates with what you are saying in a way that you have to provide options, visibility, and clarity to the team so they can better do the job. So funny. No,
but I mean, like, listen, anybody who's designing things needs to design things through the lens of, you know what, maybe it's even less than 80-20, right? Maybe it's like 70-30. You got to design things and say, like, listen, we are very clear on the what, but we got to be flexible on the how, right? Mm-hmm. We know what we want to achieve, but how we get there, it can look different, and that's okay. So I think that's been our big mantra here. And even with our customers is like, be clear on the what, be flexible on the how.
What do you expect from your team? Sorry.
What do I expect? You know what? I expect them to always do the right thing, right? And I know that's so subjective.
Come on.
It's so subjective, but I expect them to do the right thing, right? Which means it means something different in every situation, right? But do the best you can in every situation. Do the right thing by our business. Do the right thing by our customers. Do the right things by themselves, meaning as professionals, right? I've had situations, and I'll give you an example of this. I've had situations where customers have been really hard on a member of my team, right? Maybe not here at ClientSuccess because we're dealing with customer success professionals and they're usually very empathetic. But in other organizations, we've had to deal with some really tough customers. And in some case, customers who have not been very kind to our employees. And I always tell my team, listen, in those cases, the customer is not always right? You don't deserve in this role or any role to get yelled at, to be berated, to be mistreated. And so when I say like, do the right thing, it means do what's right for you too. In those situations, it's okay to shut things down. It's okay to step away. Nobody deserves to be in those situations. And so I want my team to always feel like do the right thing is something that's going to benefit them. It's going to benefit our customers. It's going to benefit our process, our people, our company, our revenue. So I think it's like a mindset of just do the right thing, right? In every situation, try to figure out what that looks like. And it's going to look different all the time.
It makes a lot of sense. However, I'm a bit surprised because, at the end of the day, the company exists to make money. Let's be honest. Yeah. And do the right thing. How do you know it's the right process? How do you know it's the right process? You see what I mean?
Yeah. So listen, let's back it up for a second. So when I say that, right, our goal and our role, we're here to obviously make our customers successful so that they stay, they renew, and they grow, right? That's the scope of our role at the end of the day. So when I say do the right thing, it's with that in mind, right? Our job, like we exist to help our customers get value from the solution so that they stay with us and grow with us. It's as simple as that. Like that is the role of our function. So when I say do the right thing in these situations, it's with that end in mind, right? In every situation, is this going to get me closer to the goal that my customer will stay with us and grow with us, right? And I say this because, listen, there's going to be cases where you're going to tell your customers no, right? No, we can't do something. No, we aren't doing something, right? The roadmap, nope, that's not going on there. No, but, no, and. These are things that we can use to kind of structure that fluidity. But the reality of it is like the do the right thing mindset is always do the right thing in the spirit of we're driving our business forward.
How do you collaborate with other departments and what are the challenges?
Oh gosh, I don't know what to start with, the challenges or how or what.
Let's
Okay.
start with the most difficult, the sales.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, listen, I think, and everyone will say this, I mean, cross-functional collaboration is probably the key to every company's success. It's that simple, right? When you have competing priorities or your teams are at odds for whatever reason, you're never going to be as successful as you could be, right? You might be successful, but you could always be more successful if you can nail that collaboration, right? So it is really imperative that as a business, you're not competing, right? Those priorities can't be competing. How you're incentivizing teams can't be competing. You all have to be very clear that we're working towards the same thing. Now, that said, it's easy to conceptualize something like that. It is very difficult to execute something like that.
Go tell that at the end of the quarter. Go.
Yeah,
Go.
exactly, right? And so what I would say is, what we want to encourage is open and honest dialogue. I'm not saying that you're always going to agree with these teams, but we always like to assume good intentions, always first, and then always just open the lines of communication, because we don't want to let ambiguity take over, right? Because if we don't know something and we start to make up the narrative in our heads and saying, well, like, oh, well, sales is doing this because they don't care if the customer stays or goes. Well, we're making an assumption, right? So what I've tried to say is, let's remove assumptions. Let's remove any ambiguity. And if we're unclear on why something's happening, let's go double click into it, right? Let's go find out. Let's go have a conversation. So when I think about facilitating good, strong cross-functional collaboration, it just starts with an openness to communicate, right? And to understand the different perspectives. Because I think once you do, you start to figure out where those breakdowns are, right? So I had a great conversation a couple of weeks back. I was out in Utah and I was meeting with one of our account executives. And, she and I were at dinner and we're chatting about all of the things that we do really well together as cross-functional teams and where there's points of friction from her perspective. And it was really great because, you assume that when people are complaining for the sake of complaining, and there's no almost like, ugh, just do it. Just do the process. Just follow the rules. Like, why are we here? It's easy to get frustrated there. But she brought a lot of really great insights in a very human way, right? Where she kind of explained to me how things were impacting her ability to move fast or navigate a deal because of process that was in place. And so as a result, right, we had that great conversation. We can now start to go and unpack the processes that need to be enhanced so that we can move faster, move smarter, and all in the same direction. So this is just one example of how, if you're just open and you communicate, you learn how to be better partners to one another. And so I would say, listen, the communication is key. The openness and willingness to hear other points of view is helpful. And then I think, listen, nailing that, it takes a lot of time, right? To get people bought into changing process, changing mindsets. Those are not easy tasks. But I think if you stay committed to a one goal mindset of listen, at the end of the day, we all want to be making more money, right? As a company, right? The more revenue we get, it allows us to control our destiny, right? Whether that destiny is to get your next round of funding or to go IPO, right? Whatever that destiny looks like, or listen, just be a profitable company. Totally okay too. That is your destiny as a business. Every team should be very aligned to that. And how you get there, right, is all the teams working together in harmony. It's got to start with communication and just being open to that.
What is the added value you provide when meeting with other managers or decision makers?
I think the big value add from my standpoint that I would like to think that I bring to the other teams is the ability to remove roadblocks for them to do their jobs really well, right? So for example, if my product team is reliant on getting access to customers to do beta programs or to, meet with them and just kind of make sure that we're adopting things right or have a conversation, whatever the case may be, we don't want to ever be blockers to that. So I always like to think that my added value is empowering them, right? And removing friction from their day-to-day, right? How can I as a leader make their lives better, right? My sales team will be very clear. We need to move faster, right? When a deal closes, our goal, how can your team get involved right away? How can we get onboarded, started pretty quickly, right? That's what they would need from me. Great. My job is to understand what they need from me and my organization and help to move those things forward. So I think that's my added value, is being very open to hearing what other teams need and then working on those things for them, right? So almost treating my cross-functional peers the same way I would treat my team, and that says I would treat customers, right? So really stepping into that role of saying, my job here as a leader is to make us all work better and faster so we can continue to grow the business. How do I do that, right? And so sometimes it's very tactical, sometimes it's more strategic. Whatever it is, I just have to be clear on understanding what their needs are from me and be able to move on those.
What does your CEO expect from you? So basically, you meet on a X basis, so weekly, monthly. What does your CEO expect from you? And I have a follow-up question that I'm going to ask right now. When you present a deck to your CEO, how do you make it interesting? I mean, you go beyond the number and you make sure no one falls asleep during the meeting, which is, let's be honest, our fears to everyone. So, what do you discuss with him?
All right, so let's start with what do I think that my CEO expects from me? I think that he expects me to be very dialed into the business, right? And so he expects that I understand what's happening with our teams, with our customers, and the business. And so would expect me to act accordingly and making sure that we're doing everything that we need to continue to drive that forward. And so there's elements of people management that he would expect, right? Like, how do I make sure that I'm dialed into each individual, what they need from me as a leader, what they need from our business in order to stay here, right? Employee retention is a big focus for everyone right now. So he would expect that I understand what it would take to keep our employees, just like we would look for retention for our customers. So retention. And so what do we do to keep them growing, to keep them happy and satisfied and enjoying their experience here? You know, from our customers, he's going to expect that I know who our customers are, what they need, what their challenges are, so I can speak intelligently internally to cross-functional teams, right? I've got to be our company's best storyteller because I have to be the one who understands the intimate details of what's working and what's not. And then what do we need to do to fix that? So I would assume that he would expect that I'm very dialed into that. Then I think he would expect me to be a very strong collaborator and team player, right? My goal here, because, you know, again, sitting over the customer business, you've got to be the most collaborative. You've got to get buy-in from everybody. And so he's going to expect me to be a great partner to all of my leaders, that I'm informing them, I'm working collaboratively with them, but that we're all, again, driving everything forward. And because my team is responsible for so much of the company's revenue, it's critical to our long-term success that we are working that way. So I would say those are some of the high-level expectations. In terms of how I communicate with him, it's got to be very clear, and it's got to be through a lens of storytelling with data. Okay, so that's the best way I could put it, right? Clear storytelling with data. You know, it's never good. It's never a good conversation where I go, I feel, I think. Those things don't fly. So my conversations and how I present data is really through that lens of like, here's what's happening, and then being able to tell it through a story. Because people connect to stories. So when you say, how do you prevent people from falling asleep? Storytelling, right? It's engaging. People can relate to it. They almost put themselves in that situation for a moment. And so if you could be a great storyteller, I think that's a really powerful way to communicate these things, and then always have data to support it.
How do you do your recruitment, and how do you know it is the right time to start recruiting?
Oof. Okay, good. These are great questions. Okay, so recruiting, I feel like I'm in an advantage here, right? Because I'm hiring customer success professionals to service customer success professionals. And my network is full of customer success professionals. So my recruiting, I do cheat a little bit, right? I could do a LinkedIn post and have 1,000 really qualified, wonderful candidates. So my recruiting, sadly, is not something that could be easily shared or replicated. For me, that's what it's easy to put something out there. What I will say is the profile, right, of what I hire for is critical. And so for me, the big thing that I like to focus on is really understanding, what does my team look like today, and what are the skills and attributes that I would look to that would build on what I have today. I think there's a lot of folks that are really heavily focused on diversity, right, which I think is great, and inclusion and all these things. But what I feel like people miss the boat on is that they feel like you need to see diversity. Right? Like the diversity looks a certain way. If I have one of this and one of this and one of this, then we've got a diverse team. And that's not really the way that I think about diversity. I think about diversity of thought, right? People that have different experiences, come from different walks of life, who have worked at different types of companies with different types of customers, right? Like for me, that is diversity, right? Diversity looks and can come across in a multitude of ways. And so my focus is not what it looks like on camera, but more so, what is the contributions to our business in terms of what are we bringing? to the table, right? So somebody who brings something different, a different point of view, a different experience, a different thought process, that's diversity for me. And so making sure that when I hire, I'm thinking about what does this person do? And is it wildly different, their contributions to my team, than everybody else I have there? So that's really important for me when I think about recruiting. Like I said, I'm in an advantage here to be able to have access in a pool of resources to go to. But I will say for other people, as you're recruiting, the new drum I'm beating these days is that your customers are going to benefit more from hiring subject matter experts than they will necessarily from just hiring customer success professionals. So if you are a CS leader and you are staffing your team, I would say the first thing you need to figure out is what do your customers need from these individuals? And I will tell you, my customers, they want to talk to CS professionals who have seen it done a million times, who have built programs and process, who have deployed technology before really well and intelligently. They want people who can be consultative. You can't be consultative to your customers if you've never done the work they do, right? Or if you can't really truly understand what that work looks like. If you can't put yourself in your customer's shoes, I think it's difficult to tell them how to do their job or how to think about things differently. So for me, the big thing I'm really heavily focused on now, and this will be true for every organization I ever go to from here on out, is subject matter expertise, because I do think that is going to enhance your customer's experience as well as the value they're getting from the partnership. Now, the other question you asked, which was the part 2, how do I know when to hire? It's all built on my leverage ratios, right? So I know that my team, each person can manage a certain number of accounts. When we start getting into the yellow zone of that, I know it's time to start to put out feelers there and start to think about recruiting. So, for example, we just recently hired somebody, and they start June 1st. We're super excited about that. This one, it's like, in addition to seeing the leverage ratios of my team and saying, we've got a lot of our team is close to hitting their capacity. My team is telling me, right? Because the numbers are one thing, but how my team feels about the work that they're expected to do with the customers they're navigating. Because even the best designed customer ratio model is only right 60, 70% of the time, because things happen. Customers have different needs. Challenges arise, right? I will tell you, managing an at-risk customer takes a lot more time, energy, and effort than managing a healthy customer, right? Where things are humming along and you're just productive and you're doing the work. You're investing more time and effort into getting a customer who is not getting what they need or not feeling like they're getting what they need, get back on track. You're doubling down on that. So I think it's important to not only look at the numbers and the data, but also check in with your team and see how they're feeling about their book of business. And then I would say outside of that, if your team isn't complaining or saying anything, look at the data, right? If your book is on fire, right? If you're anticipating a whole heck of a lot of churn, it is probably a good time to think about what your team is doing with your customers today and rethink that model, right? And it could be we need to enhance processes and we need to think about access to information, right? So a lot of people are talking about like a digital engagement model. I think that's one avenue you can go down. It could be staffing, right? So there has to be a multitude of ways that you start to look at that. But look at your leverage ratio. Hopefully you have something designed in mind. Talk to your team and then pay attention to the risk in your book.
So I understand that the team that you manage need to be well treated because it's a real matter. And you also need to pay attention to the portfolio of your customer, of your CSMs, so you can make sure that you hire the right person. On the other hand, you also have to empower them. You may have to give them new tools like Calendly, Canva, stuff like that. How do you manage the budget?
Gosh, I mean, I will say that's a tough one because especially depends on like what stage company you're at. Like I've been at Series D companies where like the pockets were deep and if we needed something, we got it and it was fine. And there wasn't really much debate about it within reason. And so managing the budget, obviously, like you're given a number, you're staying within it, but you're getting your team what you need. I think having conversations with your team about what they need and prioritizing those things is probably your best path forward. I will tell you, my team gets a lot of value from things like Calendly, you're having a Zoom license, having Canva, right? These point solutions or these tools in their toolkit to help them do their jobs better. That to them might be more powerful than like me buying some meeting manager for us to have, right? So I think it really does depend. And I think it's important to dial into your team and say, what are the things that are going to help you be better at your job, right? I think it's important for leaders to stop thinking that they know what their team needs and making assumptions and purchasing things that their team doesn't feel like they're ready for, that they don't need in their day to day. I'm big on giving my team what they need and what they want and how they need it and how they want it. I don't want to make assumptions, right? I've used a multitude of things in my past. Some of those things were really helpful. Some of them weren't. And so being able to understand what the team really needs in their day to day. I think the budget's tricky, especially when you have no budget.
Exactly. But the thing is, I've done that, asking to the team, what do you need? But most of the time, they don't know what they need, because for them, a better life is not an option. Like if you offer to scouting, or if you say, do you need this person that could help you leverage your understanding of data? They do not understand the power of data, therefore they don't ask for it. So how do you make sure that first you provide them what they need, but you also provide them some stuff that they need but don't know about? How do you know that what you think sometimes may be more important than what they want?
I think it's important to be dialed into how your team is running their day to day, right? And so this is where we think about like the operational efficiencies of how your team works in conjunction with the output, right? So like, how are they helping your customers with what they have access to? So for example, yes, to your point, my team might not know the power of having data, but if you can help paint a story that said, what if I was able to give you X, Y, and Z? How would that improve your ability to do X, Y, Z with your customers, right? So I think as a leader, sometimes, yes, you're going to make decisions because because you've been there. Like there's certain things you just need to drive efficiency. I think in other cases, when I do ask my team, it's through the lens of helping them understand what's possible, right? Because to your point, they might not know that things could be better. They just know that like this is what my world looks like today and this is the scope, and I can't even think or imagine of a better way. And so I think it's helping them understand what's possible. It's the same way you manage your customers, right? Like they're going to use your tool, but they're going to use it the way that you tell them to based off of the possibilities that you help them understand. So if I told my team, listen, can you imagine if you didn't have to have 5 email exchanges with your customer to book a meeting? How much time would that save you? Oh, okay, maybe Calendly is a great tool for them because now they're realizing, wow, you mean I don't have to go back and forth 5 times to go find a time on my calendar? That usually takes 45 minutes before we even get the meeting scheduled. We could have just had a meeting in the time it took me to send the emails. Oh my gosh, right? Power of Calendly. If I told my team, hey, listen, we're building all these decks all the time for our customers. What if I bought a template package that has all these beautiful infographics? You don't have to do anything other than pick a slide, drop it in, change the colors, and add what you want. You're not thinking about designing something that looks beautiful. It's already pre-built for you. Great. Now they understand the power of something like that, right? Time savings and efficiency, and makes them better. Now, if we can also translate that to things that would help their customers, right? If I gave you visibility in your inbox every day to which of your customers is using your product and which ones aren't, and you were able to then see, great, my customers that aren't using it, probably the ones I need to spend some more time on.
Are you telling me client success?
I'm not telling you
now?
anything. I am telling you though, there is value in having visibility, but it's through the lens of, and this is why I say storytelling is so important, because even whether it's you're talking to your CEO, you're talking to your customers, you're talking to your team, help them understand what's possible. Tell them things through the lens of a story where they can relate to it. Because if I just said, would you want a calendar tool? Is that going to be as impactful as if I said, you know how you've just spent 6 emails going back and forth with Mary over at whatever company, and oh gosh, you have time zone issues, and Mary's like, she's 18 hours ahead of you, and so like, how can you even get this done in a timely manner? What if I said that you could just send Mary a link, and then when she finds a time in your calendar that works for her, she just book it? Right? You're presenting it in a different way. And to your point with teams that don't know what they don't know, it's the storytelling that will help them figure it out.
I have a last question for you regarding the structure of your team. So let's be honest now, there is tons of roles in customer success, for better or worse. We'll see in the future. But you have onboarding manager, renewal manager, technical implementation manager, CS ops, etc., etc. How, when you get started as head of CS, and let's suppose you just have CSMs taking care of all sides of accounts, what would you say is the ideal structure of your team? What should be the right repartition of roles?
Oh gosh, I'm gonna give you a big fat it depends again, because it does depend, right? If you've got a very easy tool, like, let's just use Calendly as an example, right? Because I think it's so simple and so basic, straightforward. They designed it so it's easy to understand. I don't know, if you're Calendly, I don't think that I need an implementation manager, and I don't need that a technical engineer or a TAM. But if I'm an enterprise solution that is highly customizable, highly configurable with a lot of integrations, I'm going to need a technical resource there for my team. So, yeah, I don't think that there is a right or wrong way to structure your team or think about the roles. I think the right approach is understanding how are we going to be able to help our customers do what we need them to do in order to drive their success, which helps us retain and grow them long term. And if we can figure out the scope of what our customers need, you can design the organization around that. Now, what I feel like what happens is most companies, they are not designing it for their customers. They're designing it with some preconceived notion of roles and scopes and things that are necessary or not necessary, right? If your product is not complex, do you need an onboarding manager? I don't know. Can your CSM onboard them if it's pretty straightforward? Possibly. But there might be a point in time, right, when your business scales and gets to a certain either size or level of complexity that you're going to really need to break out those roles. So I have to give you a big fat it depends. I don't think there's a one size fits all structured approach that works. I think lean into what your customers are going to need to drive your business outcomes. Again, be clear on the what, be flexible on the how.
Awesome. Is there anything else, any other advice you would like to provide to customer success manager who want to become managers? Aside, obviously, that it's not the only way to grow.
I would say the big thing is learn the difference between being a manager and being a leader. Because if your aspirations are to grow in that career path, you've got to understand the nuances and the difference early in your career. Your employees will benefit from it and you will benefit from it. So be very clear on the two, and hopefully you pick a leadership path and not a manager path.
I love that. Thank you so much, Kristi.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.